Black billionaire bride faked her death. What her husband did next was pure evil. It was supposed to be the pinnacle of her success, marrying the love of her life in front of Manhattan's elite. But Alice Morgan had no idea her groom had already signed her death certificate. Minutes before walking down the aisle, Alice stood alone in her private bridal suite, the ivory silk of her custom Vera Wang gown catching the afternoon light. Through the bathroom door, she heard laughter, Michael's unmistakable voice, warm and confident, the same voice that had whispered promises of forever. Then she heard the words that shattered everything. Just one more glass of champagne with the pill, and by Bali, she'll have her tragic heart episode, Michael said, his tone as casual as if he were discussing dinner reservations. Then it's all ours, the company, the penthouse, everything. And I won't have to pretend anymore. A woman's giggle followed. Not just any woman. Simone. Her maid of honor. Her best friend. God, Michael, you're terrible, Simone purred. But imagine, $1 billion and freedom. No more dealing with her controlling, self-righteous. Alice's champagne flute slipped from her trembling fingers. The crystal shattered against marble. The voices stopped. And Alice realized with ice-cold horror, the poison was already coursing through her veins. Alice opened her eyes to blinding white light and the steady beep of a heart monitor. Her throat burned. Her limbs felt like lead. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was or why her chest felt like someone had parked a truck on it. Then she saw Amara. Dr. Amara Williams stood beside the bed, still wearing her white coat, her locks pulled back in a neat bun. They'd been sorority sisters at Howard. Alice had paid for Amara's medical school when her financial aid fell through. Now Amara's eyes were red-rimmed, her jaw tight with barely controlled fury. You're alive because Marcus found you in time, Amara said quietly. He called 911 when you didn't answer your door. Alice, we need to talk about what's been happening to you. The memories crashed back. The bathroom door. Michael's voice. The poison. The heart condition, Alice whispered, her voice raw. Michael said I had. You don't. Amara's voice was steel. You never did. But you do have digitalis in your system. Lots of it. Someone's been poisoning you for months, Alice. All those heart palpitations Michael rushed you to the ER for. Manufactured. He was managing your symptoms, intercepting your lab results, making sure you saw doctors he'd vetted. I pulled your real records. This was systematic. Alice closed her eyes. She'd trusted him with everything. Her health. Her company. Her heart. I have a choice for you, Amara continued, pulling a chair close. We can go to the police right now with what we have, circumstantial evidence, my medical opinion, maybe an attempted murder charge if we're lucky. Or, she paused, and something dangerous flickered across her face. Or I can declare you dead. We stage it. You watch what Michael does when he thinks he's won. And we build a case that puts him away forever. Alice thought about Michael's laugh through that bathroom door. The casual cruelty. The years of manipulation she'd been too blind to see. If she went to the police now, he'd have lawyers, explanations, reasonable doubt. He'd walk free and she'd spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder. But if he thought she was dead? How long would I have to stay in the coffin? Alice asked. Amara's smile was cold. As long as it takes to watch him hang himself. The hospital steps were crowded with cameras and microphones. Michael stood at the podium, his face a perfect mask of devastation. He wore the Patek Philippe watch Alice had given him for their engagement, 18-karat rose gold, worth more than most people's cars. His hand rested over his heart as he spoke. Alice was the love of my life, he said, his voice breaking at precisely the right moment. We were supposed to start our forever today. Instead, I'm standing here trying to understand how an undiagnosed heart condition could take her from us so suddenly, so cruelly. A reporter called out a question about the wedding. Michael's eyes glistened with unshed tears. She looked so beautiful in her gown, he whispered. I'll never forget seeing her just before. He stopped, covering his face with one hand. The cameras ate it up. Alice watched from the funeral home's preparation room, sitting beside Marcus on a metal folding chair, staring at a tablet propped on a small table. The feed was live. CNN had already picked it up. Her death was trending on Twitter. He's good, Marcus said quietly. I'll give him that. On screen, Michael finished his performance and walked back into the hospital, surrounded by sympathetic staff and security. The moment he was through the doors and away from cameras, Alice watched his face change. The grief vanished like someone had flipped a switch. He pulled out his phone, walked into an empty corridor, and made a call. It's done, he said, leaning against the wall with a satisfied smile. Yeah, the press conference went perfectly. Listen, I need you to start the estate paperwork immediately. I want access to the accounts by end of week. He paused, listening, then laughed. No investigation. Heart condition, remember? We've been building that narrative for months. The doctors won't suspect anything. Another pause. Just get it done. He ended the call and immediately opened his texts. Alice watched him type, it's done. Pack for Bali. We leave in 3 days. The message was to Simone. Marcus reached over and took Alice's hand. She realized she was shaking. Not from fear anymore. From rage so pure it burned like ice in her veins. Keep watching, Amara said from the doorway. She'd just arrived from the hospital, still in scrubs. This is only the beginning. He's going to show you exactly who he is. The Frank E. Campbell Funeral Chapel on Madison Avenue had hosted services for Judy Garland, John Lennon, and countless other luminaries. Now it hosted Alice Morgan, or rather, the elaborate prosthetic that looked convincingly like Alice Morgan lying in state. The casket was absurdly expensive, white with gold fixtures. Michael had insisted. Only the best for my wife, he'd told the funeral director, his voice solemn. What he'd really wanted was spectacle. A performance worthy of the grieving widower. The 12-day viewing was unprecedented, but Michael had explained it as honoring Alice's impact on so many lives. People need time to say goodbye, he'd said. What he really needed was time to cement his narrative, to be photographed looking devastated beside the casket enough times that no one would ever question his innocence. Alice watched on a hidden camera feed from a hotel room 3 blocks away. Marcus had installed cameras throughout the viewing room, each one invisible, each one recording everything. The visitors came in waves. Tech industry rivals who offered condolences while their eyes calculated acquisition opportunities. Board members she'd personally mentored, already whispering about leadership transitions and whether the company would survive without her vision. Investors asking Michael, quietly, respectfully, about the future of her AI platform. Michael played his part beautifully. He stood beside the casket for hours, accepting embraces, dabbing at his eyes, speaking in that carefully broken voice about loss and love. But Alice noticed what others didn't. He checked his phone constantly. Every few minutes, a quick glance down, fingers flying across the screen, then back to his grief mask. She watched venture capitalist Richard Chin approach, offering sympathies before saying, if you need anything, advice on the transition, someone to talk through the business side. I appreciate that, Richard, Michael said, gripping his hand. Alice would want the company to thrive. I'll make sure her legacy continues. Her legacy. The words tasted like ash in Alice's mouth. He was already speaking of her in the past tense, already positioning himself as her successor, already erasing her from her own empire. On day 2, she watched Simone approach the casket. Her former best friend wore black Chanel and dark sunglasses, the picture of elegant mourning. She knelt beside the coffin, touched the wood gently, and bowed her head as if in prayer. Then she stood, walked to Michael, and embraced him. The hug lasted just a moment too long. When they separated, Alice saw Simone's hand brush against Michael's, a subtle gesture no one else would notice. But Alice noticed everything now. Day 3. The viewing room was supposed to be closed after hours, but Michael had kept a key. Alice watched him unlock the door at midnight, glancing down the hallway before slipping inside. He wasn't alone. His brother Craig arrived first, a failed day trader with a gambling problem and a permanent expression of entitlement. Then Simone, no longer in mourning black but wearing jeans and a tight sweater. Finally, Michael's mother Patricia, a woman who'd never forgiven her son for proposing to that DEI hire who got lucky. Michael walked to Alice's office collection displayed in a corner of the room, bottles of whiskey she'd acquired over years, some worth thousands. He selected a 25-year-old Macallan and poured 4 glasses without hesitation. To new beginnings, he said, raising his glass toward the casket with a smirk. They drank. Alice watched from her hotel room, Marcus beside her, both of them silent as the scene unfolded. So let's talk assets, Craig said, sprawling in one of the viewing chairs. I want the Miami penthouse. I've always wanted that place. The Hamptons estate should stay in the real family, Patricia added, shooting a contemptuous look at the casket. Not that she had any real family anyway. Foster care trash who got lucky with computers. Alice's hands clenched into fists. Marcus placed a gentle hand on her arm. Simone leaned against Michael, running her fingers along his shoulder. What about the jewelry? The Cartier collection? I've always loved those pieces. It's all yours, baby, Michael said, kissing her temple. Everything's ours now. Craig laughed, refilling his glass. I still can't believe she never suspected anything. You really had her convinced you loved her. Please. Michael's voice was pure contempt. She was desperate for it. You know her story, abandoned as a kid, bounced through foster homes, built this empire but never could buy what she really wanted. Someone to love her. He shook his head, amused. She was so easy to manipulate. All I had to do was say the right words, play the devoted boyfriend, and she handed me everything. Her company, her accounts, her health records. She actually believed I cared about her heart condition. The heart condition you invented, Simone said, laughing. The heart condition I invented, Michael confirmed, raising his glass again. Brilliant, wasn't it? Keep her weak, keep her scared, keep her dependent. And when the time was right. He made a gesture like drinking. One more glass of champagne. Patricia stood, examining the room with an appraising eye. When can we start moving things? I want that Hamptons house cleared of her belongings within the month. The estate takes a few weeks to settle, Michael said. But I've got lawyers expediting everything. By the end of the month, we'll have full access. He looked at the casket, his expression twisted with something dark and victorious. And then we erase every trace of Alice Morgan. The company becomes Thompson Financial Technologies. Her foundation gets dissolved. Her name, her legacy, all of it, gone. In the hotel room, Alice's vision blurred with tears of pure rage. But she didn't make a sound. She just pressed the button that saved the video file, adding it to the growing collection of evidence. Marcus leaned close and whispered, "We've got them." "Not yet," Alice said, her voice steady. "Let them get comfortable. Let them show me everything they plan to take." Alice discovered the paperwork on day 5, courtesy of Marcus's access to her company's internal systems. Michael had moved faster than she'd anticipated. Much faster. The first document was a dissolution notice for the Alice Morgan STEM Foundation, the scholarship program that had put 300 black girls through college in the past 5 years. Michael's justification, filed with the board, consolidating charitable efforts to maximize impact and reduce administrative overhead. Translation, cutting the program entirely and redirecting funds to operational priorities. The second document was a restructuring proposal. Alice read through it with mounting horror. Every executive she'd personally hired, the diverse team she'd built deliberately, creating opportunities for people who looked like her, marked for termination. The justification, streamlining leadership structure. The reality, Michael wanted his own people in power. But the third document broke something inside her. Michael had contacted a commercial real estate developer about selling 1247, Rigdon Street in Detroit, the foster home where Alice had lived from ages 12 to 18. She'd bought the building 5 years ago, renovated it completely, and converted it into a community center. It offered after-school programs, computer classes, and safe space for foster kids who needed someone to believe in them the way no one had believed in her. The developer's proposal was attached. They'd demolish the building and construct luxury condos. Expected profit, $8.4 million. Michael had already signed a letter of intent. Alice stood at the window of her hotel room, staring out at Manhattan's glittering lights. She'd built an empire in this city. She'd lifted others as she climbed. And now Michael was systematically dismantling every good thing she'd created, erasing her legacy like she'd never existed. How long? She asked Marcus, who stood behind her reviewing documents on his laptop. Until the sale closes on Rigdon Street. 30 days. The foundation dissolution takes longer, maybe 60 days. But he's already pitched the restructuring to the board. They're voting next week. They'll approve it, Alice said quietly. Without me there to fight, they'll approve whatever he wants. She turned to face Marcus, and he saw something in her expression that made him straighten. This wasn't despair anymore. This was calculation. Strategy. We can't wait until the funeral, she said. If I wait too long, the damage will be irreversible. Those kids need that community center. My team doesn't deserve to be fired. The foundation, her voice caught. I can't let him destroy everything I built. What do you want to do? Marcus asked. Alice looked at the documents scattered across the desk, evidence of Michael's greed, his cruelty, his complete lack of remorse. She'd given him everything. And he'd taken it as his due, never seeing her as human, only as an obstacle between him and wealth. I want him to keep going, she said finally. I want him to file every paper, make every move, show everyone exactly who he is. But we move up the timeline. The funeral is in 7 days. Can you and Amara be ready? Marcus smiled. We've been ready since day one. Just say the word. The knock came at 2 a.m. Alice watched on the hidden camera as the funeral home director unlocked the viewing room door and admitted a visitor. Marcus. Her executive assistant stood there in jeans and a Howard University hoodie, looking exhausted and devastated. I need a moment alone with her, Marcus said quietly. Please. The director nodded sympathetically and retreated. Marcus waited until the footsteps faded, then approached the casket. He stood there for a long moment, just staring at the prosthetic face that looked so convincingly like Alice. Then he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I know you can hear me somehow. I don't know how Amara pulled this off, but I know you're alive. He glanced toward the hidden camera, as if he could see Alice watching. I need you to know something. I've been documenting everything for 18 months. Since the day Michael insisted on managing your medical care. Something about it felt wrong, the way he controlled your appointments, intercepted your lab results, kept you isolated from your own health information. Marcus pulled out his phone and held it up to the camera. I have bank records showing Michael's gambling debts, $3.2 million he owes to offshore accounts. I have emails between him and Simone dating back 2 years, before you even met him. I have recordings of him discussing the poisoning with his doctor friend who prescribed the digitalis. I have phone logs, texts, video from your home security system that he thought he deleted but I'd already backed up to a separate server. He paused, his jaw tight. I have everything you need to put him away for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, and about 6 other felonies. I'm ready when you are. Just tell me when. Alice sat in her hotel room, tears streaming down her face. Marcus had been protecting her all along. While she'd been blind to Michael's manipulation, Marcus had been building a case. On screen, Marcus reached out and touched the casket gently. You gave me a chance when no one else would. You saw something in me, a kid from the Bronx with a GED and a dream, and you made me your executive assistant. You changed my life. So now I'm changing yours. We're going to end him. He turned and left, nodding to the funeral director on his way out. 2 hours later, another visitor arrived. This one was unexpected. Alice's younger sister Jordan stumbled in drunk, angry, and barely coherent. The director tried to deny her entry, but Jordan pushed past him. I need to see her, Jordan slurred. I need to tell her I'm sorry. She collapsed beside the casket, sobbing. Alice watched, her heart breaking. She and Jordan hadn't spoken in 3 years, not since Michael had convinced Alice that Jordan only contacted her for money, that Jordan was toxic and manipulative and needed to be cut off for Alice's own good. I tried to warn you, Jordan cried. I told you he was controlling you, isolating you from everyone who actually loved you. But you wouldn't listen. He made you think I was the problem. She pressed her face against the casket. I'm your sister. I'm supposed to protect you. And I failed. Alice realized with crystalline clarity what Michael had done. He'd systematically removed every person who might question his control. Jordan. Old friends. Colleagues who'd known Alice before him. Anyone who might notice the manipulation. She'd thought she was building a life with Michael. But he'd been building a cage. Jordan eventually left, escorted out by security. Alice sat in darkness, processing everything she'd witnessed. Marcus's loyalty. Jordan's love. All the connections she'd thought were broken, they'd been severed deliberately by a man who needed her isolated to maintain control. She picked up her phone and texted Amara, move up the timeline. I want to end this at the funeral. Day 12. Can we be ready? Amara's response came immediately. We've been ready. Let's resurrect you. The photos appeared on Instagram at 11 a.m. on day 8. Michael had been careful, he'd set his account to private, tagged only close friends. But the internet has no secrets, and within hours, screenshots were circulating. Michael and Simone on Alice's balcony. Her Central Park West penthouse, the one Alice had purchased for $12 million, served as the backdrop for their casual intimacy. Michael wore one of Alice's expensive robes. Simone wore Alice's Cartier necklace, the one Alice's mentor had given her when she made her first billion. The caption read, "Grateful for friends who show up during the hardest times. #healing #support." By noon, gossip accounts had picked it up. By 2 p.m., legitimate news outlets were running think pieces about grief and the importance of support systems. A few sharp-eyed observers noted that Michael seemed quite comfortable, that Simone's hand on his shoulder seemed intimate rather than comforting, but those voices were drowned out by sympathetic comments about how people grieve differently. No one questioned why the widower had moved his wife's best friend into his home 5 days after his wife's death. Alice watched it all unfold from her safe house, a small apartment Marcus had rented under a shell company 3 blocks from the funeral home. She'd moved out of the hotel for security, and now she sat on a worn couch, scrolling through comments and trying not to put her fist through the laptop screen. He's not even pretending anymore, she said when Amara arrived that evening. Amara set down takeout containers and poured them both wine. Sociopaths get sloppy when they think they've won. He's convinced he's untouchable now. Look at this. Alice turned the laptop around. A new photo had appeared, Michael and Simone at 11 Madison Park, Alice's favorite restaurant, laughing over expensive wine. Posted by one of Simone's friends with the caption, "Good to see Michael getting out." Alice would want him to keep living. Would she? Amara asked dryly. Alice closed the laptop. For more days. Can we really pull this off? The holographic projection is ready. Marcus has coordinated with the FBI, they'll be positioned at every exit. Your lawyer has the evidence packets prepared for the media. The funeral is at St. Patrick's Cathedral because Michael wanted the prestige, but he has no idea we've been coordinating with cathedral security for 3 days. Amara smiled. We're going to resurrect you in front of 2,000 people, and there's nothing he can do to stop it. What if something goes wrong? Alice's voice was quiet. What if he runs? What if the arrest doesn't happen cleanly and someone gets hurt? Amara took Alice's hand. You've spent 12 days watching him destroy everything you built. You've listened to him laugh about poisoning you. You've seen him move his mistress into your home and wear your gifts while planning your erasure. She leaned close. You don't get to doubt yourself now. You're Alice Morgan. You built an empire from nothing. And now you're going to take it back. Alice nodded slowly. She thought about the community center in Detroit, about the scholarship recipients, about Marcus and Jordan and everyone who believed in her when she stopped believing in herself. Let him get comfortable, she said, echoing her own words from days ago. Predators are sloppiest when they think they've won. That's my girl, Amara said, raising her wine glass. Now let's plan your resurrection. St. Patrick's Cathedral held 2,000 people and every seat was filled. Tech industry leaders sat beside politicians who sat beside celebrities who sat beside the rank-and-file employees of Alice's company. The press was corralled in a designated section, cameras discreetly positioned. Michael had insisted on full media coverage, he wanted the world to see him mourning. Alice watched from a hidden alcove near the side entrance, Marcus beside her, both wearing wireless earpieces connected to Amara's coordination. FBI agents were positioned at every exit, plainclothes and invisible. Cathedral security had been briefed. Everyone was ready. Michael stood at the pulpit, his black suit perfectly tailored, his face a masterpiece of controlled grief. He'd been speaking for 7 minutes about the love of his life, his voice breaking at precisely orchestrated moments. Alice taught me that love means seeing someone fully, their brilliance, their vulnerability, their dreams, he said, one hand over his heart. She trusted me with all of herself. And that trust, that love, will sustain me through every day without her. In the alcove, Alice nearly laughed. The audacity was breathtaking. Michael finished his eulogy and returned to his seat in the front row, next to Simone. He took her hand, briefly, subtly, before folding his hands in his lap and bowing his head. That's when the cathedral lights dimmed. A murmur rippled through the congregation. People looked around confused. Then a light appeared above the altar, a projection beam cutting through the darkness. Alice's holographic figure materialized, life-sized and luminous, standing where Michael had just been. Gasps echoed through the cathedral. Someone screamed. Michael's head snapped up, his face going white. Hello everyone, holographic Alice said, her voice calm and clear through the cathedral's sound system. I'm Alice Morgan. And I have some things you need to know about my death. For 8 minutes, the hologram spoke. It displayed video footage of Michael and Simone in the bathroom, laughing about the poison. It showed forensic reports from Amara, documenting months of systematic digitalis poisoning. It presented bank records revealing Michael's gambling debts and his plan to inherit Alice's fortune. It named every conspirator, Michael, Simone, Craig, Patricia, and detailed their individual crimes. The congregation sat in stunned silence. Cameras captured everything. Michael remained frozen in his seat, his mouth opening and closing wordlessly. The hologram displayed Alice's will, the real one, not the forged version Michael had prepared. It showed her company restructuring to prevent Michael from gaining control. It revealed the evidence Marcus had compiled. It exposed every betrayal, every lie, every calculated manipulation. Michael Thompson told me he loved me, holographic Alice said, her voice hardening. He convinced me I was sick. He isolated me from everyone who cared about me. He poisoned me slowly, systematically, planning to inherit everything I'd built and erase my legacy entirely. A pause. But he made one critical mistake. The hologram smiled, not warmly, but with cold satisfaction. He assumed I would die quietly. He assumed I would be easy to erase. He assumed that because I was desperate to be loved, I would never see him clearly. Another pause. He was wrong. The hologram's final words rang through the cathedral, and now, I'd like to address my husband in person. The projection faded. The cathedral remained in darkness for 3 long seconds. Then the side door opened, and Alice Morgan walked into her own funeral. Alice walked down the center aisle of St. Patrick's Cathedral in a white suit, deliberately chosen, a reversal of funeral black, a statement of resurrection and reclamation. Every eye in the cathedral locked on her. The silence was absolute, broken only by her heels clicking against marble. Someone in the back screamed. Others gasped, stood, pointed. Cameras swiveled to capture her progression. Alice kept her eyes fixed ahead, on Michael, who remained frozen in the front pew like a man who'd seen a ghost. Because he had. She reached the front and stopped, standing 10 feet from him. Michael's face had drained of all color. His mouth worked soundlessly. Beside him, Simone had started crying, not artful tears, but the panicked sobbing of someone who knows they've been caught. "Hello, Michael," Alice said calmly. "Did you miss me?" He couldn't finish. His hands trembled. "This isn't possible." "Oh, it's very possible. Dr. Williams and my team kept me alive while you spent 12 days showing everyone exactly who you are." Alice took a step closer. "You moved your mistress into my home. You tried to dissolve my foundation. You laughed about poisoning me. You planned to erase everything I built." Her voice remained steady, clinical. "And you did all of it in front of cameras I had installed." FBI agents emerged from positions throughout the cathedral. They moved swiftly, professionally, converging on the front pew. Agent Sarah Rodriguez, who'd coordinated with Marcus for 3 days, approached Michael with handcuffs ready. "Michael Thompson, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, and—" Michael lunged. Not at the agents, but at Alice, his face twisted with rage. "You bitch. You're supposed to be dead. You're supposed to be." Marcus intercepted him, tackling Michael before he could reach Alice. 2 agents pulled Michael away, forcing him face down on the marble floor while Rodriguez cuffed him. Michael thrashed, screaming obscenities, all pretense of the grieving widower shattered completely. "I loved you," he shouted as they hauled him upright. "I gave you everything." Alice looked at him with something close to pity. "You gave me nothing but lies. And you took nothing from me that mattered." They arrested Simone next, then moved through the congregation to collect Craig and Patricia, who tried to slip out a side exit. All 4 were led away in handcuffs while cameras captured everything and 2,000 witnesses sat in stunned silence. When the arrests were complete, Alice turned to face the congregation. She saw board members who'd been planning to restructure her company. Investors who'd been circling to acquire her assets. Rivals who'd been celebrating her death. And she saw employees, her people, standing and applauding, tears streaming down their faces. "I'm back," Alice said simply. "And I'm not going anywhere." The cathedral erupted. People stood, cheered, cried. Marcus appeared at her side, and Jordan pushed through the crowd to embrace her sister, both of them sobbing. Dr. Amara stood at the back, smiling with satisfaction. Later, after the press conferences and FBI interviews and lawyer consultations, Alice stood in her penthouse. It smelled like Simone's perfume. There were wine glasses in the sink, unfamiliar clothes in the closet. Evidence of invasion, of violation, of everything Michael had stolen while she was dead. She had it all removed that night. 6 months later, Alice sat in a board meeting wearing the Vera Wang wedding gown, now altered into an elegant suit jacket. The dress that was supposed to represent the beginning of her new life with Michael had been transformed into something else, a reminder that she'd survived her own funeral. Marcus served as COO. Jordan ran the Community Impact Division. The Alice Morgan STEM Foundation had tripled its scholarship funding. The Detroit Community Center was expanding to 3 additional locations. And Alice had launched the Second Life Foundation, a global organization supporting survivors of intimate partner violence, named for the life she'd reclaimed. Michael was serving 25 years for attempted murder. Simone got 12 years for conspiracy. Craig and Patricia received shorter sentences but lost everything they'd coveted. As for Alice, she was finally at peace. Not because she'd gotten revenge, though justice had been satisfying. But because she'd learned to trust herself again. She'd learned that family wasn't who shared your blood, but who showed up when you needed them. She'd learned that love wasn't desperate or diminishing, it was steady and honest and real. She kept the wedding dress jacket. Sometimes she wore it to important meetings, and people would ask about the unusual silk, the intricate beading. And she'd smile and say, "It's from the day I died. And the day I came back stronger." Because Alice Morgan had survived her own funeral. And on the other side of death, she'd finally learned to live.